Life is about getting on the train before you buy a ticket. You don't know when you're going to get on. You don't know when you're going to get off. The only thing you can grasp is the present moment. With luck, you can buy a sitting ticket when you are close to getting off the train. Maybe you can still sit by the window, enjoying the last view of the journey. The unlucky ones, at some point, get kicked off the train in the middle of the journey. Io, the princess of Argos, who was turned into a heifer by the lustful Zeus, said goodbye to Prometheus and left the Caucasus Mountains. Continued her life's journey. Did she buy the view from the window? Follow me and subscribe to my channel. I look forward to you joining me as I trace the prophecies of Prometheus and unravel the destiny of men and ideas and myths by our no will. Io continues to wander. She reached the Golden Horn in Thrace, where there was the altar of the nymph Semystra. It was by the altar that she gave birth to her daughter Ceroessa. Her name means the horned, and she was raised by the nymph Semystra. As a beautiful adult, Ceroessa was a natural prey for power. Poseidon mated with her and gave birth to Byzas. Byzas later became the founder of Byzantium. Io wandered again to Euboea. In the cave called Busal, Epiphras was born. The name Epiphras means touch because he was conceived by the hand of Zeus touching Io. At Hera's direction, Epiphras was hidden by the Curetes. Io swam across the Ionian Sea, a sea whose name was called Ionia because of Io. The main islands in the eastern part of the sea are known as the Ionian Islands and belong to present-day Greece. The inhabitants of the islands were called Ionians. At the mouth of the Nile, Io was restored to human form by Zeus. When Zeus grew tired of his old love and went hunting for new beauty, Io found a good-natured man who was willing to take her as his wife. Telegonus, king of Egypt. His name means born afar. Io, whose destiny was probably to keep searching in the world, set out again to find her son. In Syria, she finally found her son Epiphras, who had been taken by the Curetes and raised by the wife of the king of Byblos here. As an adult, Epiphras married Memphis. Memphis' father was the Nile god Nilus. The second Titan, Oceanus, with his wife Thetis, fathered 3,000 river gods, Potamoi, and 3,000 nymphs, Oceanids. As we mentioned earlier, Metis, the first wife of Zeus, was one of the Oceanids. 3,000 means many, and in short, all the gods or nymphs associated with rivers, streams, and ocean waters were descendants of Oceanus and Thetis. Nilus was one of the 3,000 Potamoi, representing the Nile River. This longest river in Africa is about 6,650 kilometers or 4,130 miles long, and covers 11 countries, including today's Democratic Republic of Congo, Tanzania, Burundi, Rwanda, Uganda, Kenya, Ethiopia, Eritrea, South Sudan, Sudan, and Egypt. Epiphras and Memphis had a daughter, Libya. Poseidon, the king of the sea, overpowered and raped Libya again, give birth to the twins, Belus and Agena. Later, Beros ruled Egypt, and Agena, the name means valor, manliness, ruled Sidon and Tyre, which the two cities were located in Phoenicia, which is nowadays located in Lebanon. Potamoi are the gods of rivers in Greek mythology. Oceanids are the nymphs associated with the sea. The rest of the freshwater nymphs of fountains, wells, springs, and streams were called naiads, who were both daughters of Nilus, the Nile River god. Belus then married Achairo, one of naiads, and had twins Aegyptus and Danaus. Aegyptus conquered the nearby country ruled by the people known as the Melampods, or Melampods, named it Egypt, and became king of Egypt. Egypt gets its name from Aegyptus. Both he and his fellow brother Danaus were more raw and full of positive energy. Aegyptus had 50 sons with different women. Danaus fathered 50 daughters with different women and was known as Danaids. Since it was 50 to 50, the parentage would save the parents the trouble of finding compatible spouses for their children. Aegyptus then ordered his 50 sons to marry the 50 daughters of his brothers. For an ancient prophecy said that Danaus would be killed by his own son-in-law. To escape his doom, Danaus, on the advice of Athena, built a boat and fled Egypt with his 50 daughters. Because his ancestor Io was a princess of Argos, Danaus took his daughters and fled to Argos in a boat. The king of Argos at this time was Pelasgus, nicknamed He Who Laughs. The king took in Danaus and his daughters. Danaus invented well drilling in Argos and taught it to the local population. This developed from Argos to all parts of Greece around 1485 BC, and people began to draw water by drilling wells. The ancient Roman writer, naturalist, soldier, and statesman Gaius Plinius Secundus, also known as Pliny the Elder or Pliny the Great, he lived around the time when Lu Xu fought the Battle of Restoration to restore the Han Dynasty and founded the Eastern Han Dynasty in China. Pliny the Elder recorded this invention in his notes on natural history.
He, Danaus, may have introduced wells into Greece, but they had, long before his time, been employed in Egypt and in other countries. The term diption, thirsting, which it appears had been applied to the district of Argos, may seem to render it probable that, before the arrival of Danaus, the inhabitants had not adopted any artificial means of supplying themselves with water. But this country, we are told, is naturally well supplied with water.
Presumably it was too difficult for all 50 sons to find daughters-in-law with matching identities. Or it was just a matter of needing to keep the royal bloodline pure, as in the case of the Japanese royal family. After all, the Egyptian tradition, for the sake of the royal family to maintain the lineage of the gods, was one of consanguineous unions, in which not only siblings, but also fathers and daughters, could be married. Aegyptus also pursued Argos with his own 50 sons as well. Danaus consented to the marriage between the children of the brothers, but to avoid a divine disaster, he summoned his 50 daughters on the night before the wedding and ordered them to kill their husbands on the wedding night. On the wedding night, the eldest daughter, Hypermnestra, begged her husband, Lynceus, to keep her virginity. She thought this would avoid both the oracle and the bloodshed. But with the exception of the eldest daughter, the remaining 49 daughters of Danaus, the Danaids, killed their husbands while they slept. The next day, 49 widows buried the bridegroom's head at Lerna, an area of springs in a lagoon off the east coast of the Peloponnese, south of Argos. Much of the area was swampy, and the mythical Lernaean Hydra lived here. Then the Danaids held a funeral for the bodies of their husbands in front of the city. Aegyptus died of grief when he learned of his son's tragedy. Danaus imprisoned his disobedient eldest daughter, Hypermnestra, in the Argive courts. Aphrodite, the goddess of sex, sympathized with Hypermnestra and rescued her. The sole survivor, Lynceus, later killed Danaus and his 49 daughters and took the crown of Argos, since the gods had no tolerance for women actually killing their husbands. Therefore, the daughters of Danaus, after their deaths, were sent to Tartarus, the lowest level of the underworld, where they were punished for carrying water from the lower level up steep stone steps to the upper level, where they poured it into perforated containers. Only when it was full could they rest. Since the containers was perforated, they could never fill it. The punishment for drawing water also symbolizes the invention of the well that they and their father brought to Greece. This is consistent with Han mythology, where gods or people who benefit mankind are usually not able to be worshipped or have a perfect ending. On the contrary, those gods or people who send calamities to mankind can be better worshipped or revered. This myth also shares the same metaphor of eternally futile endeavors, an unrelieved destiny, with the stories of Sisyphus and Ocnus, Prometheus' liver, pecked by the eagle during the day and growing at night, has a similar meaning. The story is enacted in Aeschylus' play The Suppliants. Lynceus and Hypermnestra, who became the new rulers of Argos. The reign of Danaus and his son-in-law, Lynceus, was known as the Danaiid dynasty. The Lynceus and Hypermnestra had a son, Abas. Abas was a successful conqueror and gained the favor of Hera, who blessed him with a shield that could withstand any sword. Even after Abas' death, his enemies would flee at the mere sight of this shield. He founded the cities of Abi in the northeastern of ancient Phocis, and Argos Pelasgikon in Thessaly. Io's descendants had a tradition of having twins, and Abas and his wife Ocalia had twin sons, Acrisius and Proetus, and a daughter, Idamene. Acrisius, whose name means ill judgment, and Proetus began fighting in their mother's womb, and legend has it that in the course of their fights they invented the shields or bucklers. After the death of Abas, Proetus succeeded to the throne. The ancient Greeks were either pondering philosophical questions or chasing eroticism. They had heads of gold, strong bodies of bronze, and genitals of iron. Aside from the fact that they couldn't live forever, the Greeks had few goals in life that couldn't be challenged. So for Proetus, seducing his niece was nothing to make a fuss about. Blame it on the fact that Danae, the daughter of his twin brother Acrisius, was simply too beautiful. The beautiful Danae turned the twin brothers against each other completely, and the war between the two finally broke out. Acrisius defeated Proetus. After 17 years of reign, Proetus ceded his throne and fled to Lycia. Lycia is in present-day Turkey and includes the provinces of Antalya and Mora, as well as some inland areas of Burdor. At Iabates, or Amphianax, in Lycia, Proetus married the king's daughter, Sthenebia, meaning strong cow or strong through cattle. Having gained the support of his father-in-law, he once again marched back to Argos to make war with his brother. Eventually a ceasefire was reached and Acrisius ceded Tiryns and the eastern half of Argolis, the Varium, Medea, and the coast of Argolis. Acrisius, who has only daughters and no sons, is disappointed that he has no male heir, and asks the oracle at Delphi if this will change. The oracle tells him that he will not have a son and that he will be killed by his daughter's son. King Acrisius kept the beautiful Danae in a bronze chamber under his court to prevent her from being seduced by other men. However, all beauty cannot be shut away, and sexuality is something that even the gods cannot suppress. Like the cosmic force in Sumerian mythology, she is the driving force and source of the world's evolution. Zeus, the king of the gods, the plunderer of all beauty, sent down golden rain that flowed from the roof of the catacombs into the womb of the beautiful woman. Soon their child, the demigod Perseus, was born. Unwilling to kill his grandson with his own hands, and fearful of provoking the wrath of the gods or the vengeance of the Furies, King Acrisius threw Danae and Perseus into the sea in a wooden box. Zeus then instructed Poseidon to protect the mother and child, and they drifted safely to Seriphos. Dictys, the brother of King Polydex, discovered Danae and Perseus inside a chest that had been washed upon shore or was caught in his fishing net. He treated them well and raised Perseus as his own son. Danae's luster was also something that King Polydex could not refuse. But Danae is not fond of the king. Instead of the divine power of Zeus and the roguish dominance of Zeus, the king hoped that he could rely on his own charms to win a woman's hand. But Perseus' protection of his mother prevented Polydeuces from achieving his goal. King Polydex announced his desire to marry Hippodameia in preparation for a marriage contest. Hippodameia, whose name means she who masters horses, was the daughter of Oenomaus, king of Pisa. Like the oracle given to Danaus, Oenomaus was told that he would be killed by his daughter's husband, his own son-in-law. He therefore demanded that all suitors would race against himself in a horse race, and the loser would be put to death. Polydeuces threw a great banquet and asked each guest involved to contribute a horse. Perseus had no horse to give, so he asked Polydex to name any other desired gift as a substitute for a horse. Whatever the gift was, he would obtain it. Polydex then presented his request, the head of Medusa. Medusa was originally a priestess of the temple of Athena, Ancient Greeks made offerings to the gods in their temples, offering their own sacrifices. Of course, the will of the gods, the oracle, was also requested for important decisions. We will often see oracles in Greek mythology, especially at Delphi. Delphi was known as Pytho in the time of Homer, and it was a municipality located in the region of Phocis in central ancient Greece. It was also considered by the ancient Greeks to be the center of the world and a holy place dedicated to Apollo. The priestess here was called Pythia. Diodorus Siculus, or Diodorus of Sicily, was a historian of the 1st century BC. He wrote the monumental Bibliotheca Historica, which consisted of 40 volumes, 15 of which survived intact between 60 and 2030 BC. In his account, a shepherd named Keroessa, who occasionally found one of his goats falling into a crack in the earth, exhibited bizarre behavior. Upon entering the crevice himself, he found himself filled with divine power and able to see beyond the present into the world of the past and future. He excitedly shares his discovery with nearby villagers. Around 1600 BC, many people began to visit the site to experience convulsions and trances, and legend has it that some disappeared into the chasm due to the frenzy. After a number of men died, the villagers chose a single young woman as the liaison for the divine inspirations. Eventually, she came to speak on behalf of the gods.
Echecrates, the Thessalian, having arrived at the shrine and beheld the virgin who uttered the oracle, became enamored of her because of her beauty, carried her away and violated her. And that the Delphians, because of this deplorable occurrence, passed a law that in the future a virgin should no longer prophesy, but that an elderly woman of 50 would declare the oracles, and that she would be dressed in the costume of a virgin, as a sort of reminder of the prophetess of olden times.
The oracle is not so much a prediction of the future as a declaration of divinely determined destiny. All those who accept the oracle try to reject the divine determination and do their best to control their own destiny, but in the end they fail hopelessly. Please follow me, and I hope you share the secrets of the myths I reveal. Before we begin the next chapter of our hero's journey, let's share the Delphic maxims.
1. Know thyself. 2. Nothing in excess or moderation. 3. Surety brings ruin.